Wizard towers are cool and fairly simple to make, but I'm gonna make it more interesting and show you how I did it. But I had some help from Ash's Den, so check out his video on this build after mine. We will start the build with a wool plan, but I want the tower to have a nice curve, so I will use different sized cylinders to lay out that curve. For each layer, I will decrease the radius value of the cylinder by 1. However, I don't want the curve too harsh, so I'll make each layer fairly tall. But I'll have the 4th layer and the curve. I want enough room for a walkway, so this part of the tower will start smaller. But to add a little complexity to this tower, I'll add a smaller tower sticking out the side of it. Now I'm going to add a second tower to the side of it, which will be connected by a bridge to the first tower. I will use the same process that I used on the first tower to lay out the base. However, the top of the tower will stick out from the base. So here's the story of the two towers. The wizard that lives in this tower is part of the military, and that military uses this tower as an outpost, so we should detail it as such. As part of the detailing, we added buttresses to the bases of the towers. Buttresses are pretty easy to make when they are coming off of a straight wall. However, things can get complicated when you place them at an angled wall. We made a mistake when bringing the buttress down to the ground, and it ended up looking wrong. It was because we brought it down like it was water. To fix this, make each layer alternate between even and odd widths. Since our buttress needs to be 3 blocks wide, we started at 3 blocks wide at the top, then 2 blocks wide on the next layer, then back to 3 blocks. Repeat this until you get to the ground, and your angled buttress will look correct. This will work at any width, like the angled buttresses on the second tower, which are 1 to 1. Now on to the bridge connecting the two towers. I have to account for the towers being angled apart, so I start off with a line to get an idea of what direction the bridge will go. I also want the bridge to angle up from the second tower to the first, so I will drop the line to the level I want it at, and then work on the curve of that line. When I get the curve in a position I like, I will widen the line to actually make the bridge. Then I would work on the curve of the supports of the bridge. Curves can be complicated, so I'll show you how to make one. So first you would find your initial depth point. We would then progress to a turning point block where the height of each layer will get shorter and shorter until that point. You would then mirror what you did before the turning point and progress it to a horizontal flat point. Use slabs to smooth out the curve, and now your curve is complete. Angled curves, like this bridge, can be complicated, so you would just have to play around using the steps I just outlined until you can get it right. With the bridge finished, I should work on the roofs now. We had the roof hang over the wall by 2 blocks to create room for a trim beneath the roof. I then laid out the curvature of the roof by using a line. After I got a curve I liked, I filled in the roof. However, to get rid of that blocky shape, I carved the roof to curve down from a middle point in each layer. I then repeated this process to the other tower. Now we needed to figure out how we were going to color this thing. I wanted the base of the tower to be a dark color, so we created a gradient using a gradient tool from a server plugin called Go Paint. The blocks that we used were blackstone bricks, cracked deep slate tiles, deep slate bricks, and deep slate. But we didn't want the tower to be all dark, so we used a lighter gradient of tough, stone bricks, stone, and andesite on the upper parts of the tower. We also wanted the buttresses to stand out some, so we used bedrock, tough, and stone brick walls on them. We then colored the bridges. I added a second bridge at some point with bedrock and cobbled deep slate. I then added a nice smooth stone trim to the bridges to make them more interesting. Finally, we colored the roofs with mangrove planks, red terracotta, acacia planks, and stripped acacia wood. Then we colored the roofs on the smaller towers differently with crimson planks. With the coloring done, it was time to move on to the details. We properly connected and detailed the roofs and the top of the wizard tower, and added a nice parapet to the walking area on the first tower. Also added another parapet to the second tower as decoration. I then added windows to the towers. I initially wanted to have banners on the first tower, but then I decided it was a better fit on the second tower. We went through many banner design iterations, but settled on this white and red pattern. The last step was to add some flags to the top of the tower, and now the exterior is finished. Now it was time to start work on the interior, so we begin with the larger tower, which will function as the barracks for a small military force. We will start with the spiral staircase. Ash taught me a cool trick where I can use a cylinder to help me lay out the staircase. This made the process a whole lot easier. After the staircase was finished, we began work on the bottom floor, which would be where the soldiers eat and cook their food. To make room for the kitchen, I added a balcony where soldiers would eat. Ash made a giant furnace and designed the kitchen. He also added some dried herbs shelves and meat hanging from the ceiling. With the kitchen now complete, it was time to move on to the next floor, which would be the main barracks area. We created some simple bunk beds. I added some ladders to the beds, but since you can't place ladders on beds normally, I used this command to place the ladders. You can change the rotation of the ladders by changing the east to north, south, east, or west. I then added some tables in the empty space. I placed some playing cards on one of the tables by using netherite scrap, then added a few shelves, and the barracks were now finished. We then worked on a sort of lounge area and the access point to the lookout area, added some bookshelves and a few chairs to decorate the room, and then we moved up to the final room, which would be another lookout point. We just added a few items to the room to at least give the lookout in this room something to do. Now it was time to work on the second tower. We will start with a staircase that leads up to the wizard's room, but of course we need some magic, so I added some floating potions and candles. But before we detail the wizard's room, we're going to create a dungeon at the base of the tower. This is where the wizard will keep his test subjects. Usually they are animals, but an occasional prisoner might be held down here. Now with the dungeon out of the way, we can work on the best room, the wizard room. We added some plants hanging from the ceiling, some floating candles, plenty of books, and some odd plants. But this wizard has found some skulk from the deep dark. Will he unlock the secrets of it, or will he succumb to its effects? Who knows? But thinking about that question nearly made us forget to add some curtains. But with that final touch, the wizard tower is now done. Now subscribe and watch the next video.